You're listening to Word Slinger Podcast, episode 59, Going for No, with Andrea Waltz. No.
Writing a book. It can be the best way to build or grow your business, or to simply tell the story that you wish to tell. Learn how to write your book in 30 days or less. Pick up 30-day offer today from Amazon, Apple iBooks, or other online retailers.
It's the Word Slinger Podcast, where story matters. Build your brand, write your book, redefine who you are. It's all about the story here. What's yours? Now, here's the guy who invented pants optional, Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger.
Word Slinger.
Word Slinger. Hey, everybody. How's everyone doing? I am, of course, Kevin Tomlinson, the Word Slinger. And I may be part of the reason you tuned in. I'm hoping I'm kind of part of the reason you tuned in. But the real reason you tune in is to hear great guests like the one that's on today's show, Andrea Waltz, who has this interesting concept about going for no, and how you can use that to get, more out of your life. You can get more out of your life with no. Isn't that weird? It's kind of cool, actually, and I think you're going to enjoy this interview. Before I hop in, just wanted to say, and, this is yet another example of, I butcher her name to begin with. I always do. I don't know what my problem is with names. We talked about this in the last episode, how whenever you only see someone's name in writing, or you only talk to them and you get their first name, you may or may not always know the pronunciation or whatever. This was one of those cases. So I want to apologize in advance to Andrea Waltz for getting her name wrong immediately, right off the start, just despite the fact that we had actually spoken to each other before the show, and she had corrected the record for me. So sorry about that. It's not going to be the last time I do something like that. It's just part of who I am, I guess. But you will enjoy this interview. Say yes to the interview about Go for No. And before we get started, I just want to say thank you so much to the people who are actively supporting me on Patreon, which I admit I've been kind of lax about. I need to update. I've been saying this for like a year now. I need to update the video. The video's crap. It was something I threw together last minute. I should have spent more time on it. You deserve better. But I need to fix that up. But thank you for those who are actually supporting me on Patreon. I really do appreciate that. The money does help. It helps. It helps me keep doing this stuff. And this is all about bringing you guys the very best stories I can find out there from really interesting people. Sort of the unusual stories, the not so typical stories, the sort of behind the scenes stories. I like that stuff, and I hope you do too. I think you do. Judging from the reactions I get, I think you do. But I want to be able to bring you more of that, and I want to be able to have the time. And I'm thinking about hiring somebody to help me produce the show so that things go a little faster each week. That would save me hours. I spend hours producing these shows. You have no idea how much work goes into producing these episodes, which may account for why some of them don't come out so great. Anyway, thank you for that support so much. I appreciate. I also appreciate those of you who have gone out and bought my books, which is that's just my favorite way for you to support me and my work. And you can find my books at kevintomlinson.com/books, where you can find everything from some great science fiction to what I'm terming now more speculative fiction. That's I'm going into a phase where I'm writing a lot more contemporary, sci-fi-ish, but not really sci-fi, like suspense and that sort of thing. So, there's always that little element of, sci-fi in there. So I hope that keeps my sci-fi audience happy. But for those of you, I get a lot of people who say, I don't really read science fiction. And I think for the most part, they're talking about, they don't want to read stuff like, a Star Trek novel or, or something about Star Wars. They're not into that. And they'd rather read like, Tom Clancy or Stephen King or, whatever their genre of choice is. And what I've discovered about a lot of those writers is that stuff really boils down to science fiction. They're just calling it something else. So that's what I've started doing because as much as I am a sci-fi lover on film and television, the books I tend to love to read don't really fit that category just perfectly. And that's kind of the way the books I write work as well. So working on that. Maybe you can help me out with that. If you've got suggestions, you can fling them my way. This is the kind of thing we talk about on the Self-Publishing Answers podcast, so maybe I should bring it up on the show. But beyond that, let's get past that. If you want to support me, I do appreciate it. Go to kevintumlinson.com/books. Buy a book, enjoy a book. There's some nonfiction there if you're a nonfiction reader. The 30-Day Author, of course, is there. But you can also get on my mailing list, become a slinger. And if you do that, you'll get updated on whatever's going on in my world. As we get closer to this RV lifestyle, you're going to start hearing more about that kind of stuff. I've got a guest coming up whom I've interviewed, and you're really going to enjoy that interview. I've got more on the way, too. So I'm kind of trying to, this show follows sort of the current of my life. So you're going to get to hear some behind the scenes as I prepare for the next phase of my life with my wife, Kara. All right, that's enough of that. Let's get on from that. You go get on the list, of course. You'll get updated on books, podcasts, whatever. But you have come for a very specific reason, and that is to hear from our new friend, Andrea Waltz. And so I'm going to let you get in on that conversation right now. And stick around. I'm sorry I keep swallowing. I do this. You know me. I keep swallowing. I'm having a really rough throat day. Week recently, a couple of weeks. So it's been a little rough, but I'm working through it. So if you will stick around after the interview, we'll chat just a bit more. And for now, enjoy Going for No with Andrea Waltz. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in again. And I'm here today with and I'm going to screw it up. I just know I'm going to screw it up. It's Andrea Waltz, right?
Andrea,
I knew it.
Yes.
I knew it. We literally just went through that. And I said it right the very first time I said it, and then I knew I was going to get it wrong from that point forward. This is what happens when you only ever see someone's name in writing and you don't actually hear it spoken aloud. So Andrea Waltz, who is an author and speaker, she's a co-author of the best-selling book, Go for No. Which is cool. I've been thumbing through it. I haven't managed to finish reading it all yet. I'm sorry about that. I only just learned about it recently, so I'm going to give myself a little bit of a break there. So how are you, Andrea?
Kevin, I'm doing fine. Don't worry. And the good news is Kevin is so hard to screw up. I'm good.
So you got mine right exactly the first time. So,
Yes.
So tell me a little about Go for No.
Go for No is a fable. It's a business fable that we wrote actually back in 1999 and self-published in 2000, which is fundamentally like the dinosaur era when it comes to self-publishing. Yes. Like before there was anybody out there to help to do anything for us. And it's a short 80-page story about a guy who is a mediocre salesperson, an average salesperson who happens to kind of magically, supernaturally meet a more successful future version of himself. This is him 10 years in the future that he meets, and he's trying to figure out why the other him is so successful. How did he get to be where he is today? And interestingly, as they share and kind of compare notes, they had something happen, which the version of him that we're following didn't really pay attention to, and the successful version of himself did. And that one thing was that he learned to not fear the word no, and to do what the book title is, to go for no, to hear no more often. Yeah. And so it's an easy concept, but it's a fable. And so I think that's part of the reason why the book has done so well over the years is people love stories, as you know.
Yeah, exactly. So, all right. So you self-published in 2000. Landscape was pretty barren back then. How did you handle the self-publishing at that point?
Well, it was, and my husband and business partner, Richard, he actually the very first book we self-published was technically, I will go back even further, 1998.
Oh, okay.
We published, I guess what you'd call, I don't know if it's technically a trade paperback. It's for the retail industry, and it was a little 64-page book called Unlocking the Secrets of Retail Magic, and it was 64 pages. This is about as small as you can go and still actually have a spine and actually have the binding. We really just taught ourselves. We found a little, although the biggest thing we found was at the bookstore, which now you can find hundreds of books on indie publishing and publishing. There was a little book. It was also, I think, 64 pages, a little green book that just said how to self-publish. We studied it. We just literally followed it step by step. We found a printer. We found someone to design our book cover, and we had it done. And we had, I think, 3,000 books shipped into us that sat in our garage, and we had to figure out how to market them, which, of course, isn't so different from today.
Right. Yeah. It's all about the marketing, actually. Sometimes I feel like I do more marketing than actual writing these days.
Yes.
So, all right, go for no. I mean, what does it mean exactly to go for more no's?
Right. Well, it's a counterintuitive concept. In fact, Richard often says that he hates the title. He wishes that we hadn't named the book that, because it's kind of like, some people think, go for no, what a stupid piece of advice. Why would anyone want to go for no? And but it is counterintuitive, because the whole idea is that you intentionally increase your failure rate. In other words, you go out of your way to intentionally increase the number of no's you're hearing in a sales situation, in really any situation in which you're asking for something. So if you're a writer trying to get published, this is basically saying increase the number of rejections you're hearing. Yeah. If you're sending out a letter a week, you need to be sending out 3 letters a week, or 10 emails a day, or whatever, as opposed to just trying to avoid that rejection and protect yourself. It really is about increasing it.
So it seems like it's about getting more numbers on the books, right? You're hitting more sales leads. You're going out and putting yourself out there more.
Exactly. It is a numbers game philosophy.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And a lot of people understand that intellectually.
Yeah.
I think the story helps bring it forward emotionally, because from an emotional standpoint, people, they want to protect themselves, and they don't, and people take it personally.
Right. So what made you guys decide to do it in a sort of narrative format like this?
Well, we are lovers of fiction and screenwriters as well. We've written a few screenplays, which we actually were working on before we decided to self-publish books. It was actually a hobby of both of ours, and when we met, it was something that we really both, kind of was a thing that we shared. And so we knew that we wanted to write business books that promoted our speaking business, but instead of writing just, the typical how-to, here are the 10 keys, whatever, we really wanted to make something fun and be able to express our creativity. So every business book that we've ever written, pretty much, I think except for maybe one, which was more training, every business book that we've ever written was a fable, was fiction based. And actually now we are writing an entire fiction series.
Oh yeah, okay. Is that the Onyx Web? Is that the one?
That's right, Onyx Web. Yeah,
I did a little homework.
You did. Yeah, we decided to go really reasonable in the beginning, Kevin. So we're doing a 10-book series to start, just something.
Yeah, you kept it really low key.
Yes.
How's that going?
You know what? It is going fantastic in terms of the creation. Getting the word out on fiction has been such an eye-opening learning experience, and I knew it would be. But I'll tell you, when it comes to business books, and the whole great thing about a business book is you're solving a problem, right? So it's okay, go for no, helps people overcome fear of rejection. And so really it's about finding people who have that problem. So it's finding vice president of sales, or finding somebody who owns, runs a big sales force.
Right.
If you can find that person, you can give them a copy of the book, and you can, hopefully sell them lots of copies. Mm-hmm. As you know, fiction is entirely different. Right. You're literally, you're clawing and scratching for that one reader to bring them into your world, and it is a interesting experience.
So how are you handling that key difference then?
Like Go for No, in the beginning, of course, we're completely unknown, and we're completely unknown in the fiction world. So we really what I'm doing is I'm going after influencers. I'm looking for people who have, an influential voice in that maybe they have a paranormal blog or a supernatural blog of some kind, and that's really what it's all about. It's looking for those influencers who can review. Right now, it's really about just getting reviews, because I'm trying to establish that credibility.
Right. Yeah. And so you are finding it's a little more difficult, huh?
Oh, it's an entirely different process, an entirely different world. I will tell you this. Here's my absolute secret, and this is why. I mean, Go for No. As I said, we published in 2000. We actually had the most horrific cover. We designed it ourselves. It was a total disaster. All it said was "Go for No" in black letters on a red background. So it was the most boring. You'd look at it and just go, literally, I'm going for no on the book. I don't want to read it. And we didn't do very well the first few years, but we had a guy read it who called us a couple days later. We met him at a conference, a marketing conference actually. He called us a couple days later and said, "I love your book. Your book's amazing. It's changed my life, blah, blah, blah. But you guys have the worst cover in publishing history. If you will change the cover and actually hire someone to make you a good cover, I will take 5,000 copies." So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, so we said, all right, this is this is worth it. This is okay. It's time. So we did. We and that's the great thing about indie publishing and self-publishing is you have always those opportunities to learn, change, fix your mistakes, and we did. In 2010, we finally hit the Amazon sales and selling list as number one. We got to number one on that particular list for Go for No. It took 10 years, Kevin.
Yeah.
So, 10 years, overnight success. That's my attitude with Onyx Web, with the fiction series. It's timeless. I will be sharing it and quote, marketing it forever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you find, okay, so one of the things I discovered, it seems to me anyway, that nonfiction is a little more easily discovered by people who may be just browsing for something and, entering keywords in Amazon. And that seems to not be quite the case with fiction. At least it hasn't been my experience that that's the case. What do you think of that?
Oh, I think you're right. Well, today it's all about filters, right? People, everyone has their go-to filters. For some people, they go to their best friend and say, okay, what's good out, right? Mm-hmm. It's kind of like, to use movies as a perfect analogy, some people just go on Flickster and see, okay, what's coming out this weekend. Some people ask their best friend or their brother or sister, what are you seeing? So we all are, and some people just, they walk up and see whatever happens to be playing. Right. And so we all have these filters, and today there are so many filters. I think that even doing a search is almost unnecessary. I think people go to their trusted filter, so it's their favorite blog, or they're subscribed to BookBub or some kind of email list where they get notification of a book coming out or a new series at a discount. I mean, there's just all these filters, and so really it's how do I get into the place where people into those filters, into where I can be that trusted recommendation, because it's not just the reviews help, but really it's getting into that place of being in that trust circle of trust, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. And that circle of trust is kind of difficult sometimes to build. At least my experience.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it is why you see the same names over and over again, is because I think it's human nature to not want to change, and it's human nature to say, oh, I've read James Patterson. Let me read the 27th book that he's got coming out. And there are amazing, works coming out literally every day. Right. And it's just a challenge to change your marketing message and to be creative, but to be patient and have that. I mean, this talk about a go for no message, to be patient and persistent, because this is not a 3 month, 6 month, let's see what happens deal. I believe that it takes years for these things. And just listening to your interview with, I think it was Andy, the author of The Martian.
Yes, Andy Weir.
Yeah, Andy, it's such a fun interview. And
Yeah.
even him with his publishing, writing that for 3 years. Talk about patience and persistence and just putting his content out there and then getting it discovered.
Right. Yeah. And that is interesting because there's never a guarantee at all. And I don't think he was, based on his interview, he wasn't really going for anything in particular, but there was never a guarantee that was ever going to get picked up and liked by anyone. So talk about going for no.
Exactly.
So, okay, you're self-published. Let me ask this question, because I rarely ask this, actually. But what's the sort of primary means for you guys to get an income? Is it the publishing, or is it the speaking?
It's kind of both. Now that we've had the book out for so long, we have a pretty good foothold, and we are in our category, in our two categories, sales and selling, and also we're big in multi-level. We're usually in the top 10, if not the top 3 spots all the time, and which is great in terms of just having that income from publishing, which allows us to publish other things that do not sell, but also speaking. And so the two really work together, which is why from a nonfiction standpoint, if you're solving a problem for anyone, whether it's overcoming rejection like us or helping someone learn how to handle stress or learn how to cook better, the model really is become a problem solver in every area. So it's do that with speaking and getting out to conferences, or maybe it's in private meetings and conferences, things like that. It's the books, it's your podcasts, it's your webinars, it's your blog, right? It's just becoming that full expert in every area. That's what we've done with Go for No, is kind of maxed out every way to communicate with someone who wants to solve that problem.
Yeah.
Again, with fiction, right? It's challenging because what problem are you solving? People can be entertained by 2,000 channels on their TV and millions of books, and so it's really figuring out how to lure them in to get that taste, of that new entertainment.
Yeah. And that's and that's the whole marketing side of it, and I think that's a challenge. And I'm especially curious because I've done some public speaking. I've mostly just been invited to do things. Like, how do you market that kind of business?
Yeah, that's a great question. And keep in mind, this comes from like the expert standpoint, right? Okay. So there are two real big places that you can speak. One is what I call kind of the public seminar, public conference world. So somebody's having, say, I just went to this past weekend, the speculative fiction Southeast conference here in Orlando.
Cool.
Yeah, it was super cool. And Richard actually sat in a writing workshop with Orson Scott Card, which
that's awesome. That's my hero.
yeah, he was pretty amazing, and he taught us a couple things that really there's no price that you can put on some of that wisdom, right, that you gain from someone like that. It was amazing. So we went to that conference. So the speakers there were there because of their expertise and their credibility. I don't know what they were paid. A lot of times at engagements like that, you may get paid something small or not at all, but your quote back end, which is I want to get people into my community, listening to my podcast, reading my blog, etc. So I will come and I will do a workshop for you on XYZ. So there's that model. And then really there's the model that we're involved in, which is speaking privately to corporations or associations, right, where they bring in, I hate to say motivational speakers, but that's kind of our category.
Right.
That 60-minute slot where we teach our Go for No concept. And that really, the marketing for both of those really is twofold. One, you can go out and be proactive. In other words, you call, you call up Hertz and say, hey, do you guys have meetings? And they go, yeah, we have an annual sales meeting. And I say, great. I'm a speaker. Can I send you information? And they say, sure. There's that model. There's also, I think from the expertise side of it, and kind of for someone like you, it's really about continuously building your brand, becoming that well-known expert to where people start knocking on your door and saying, hey, you've built this community, you've interviewed all these amazing people, you've got all this content, can you come speak for us?
Right.
So really what it comes down to is it's how reactive do you want to be? How proactive do you want to be? For me, I can be kind of in the middle. People find us and discover us because of the book, which is great. Part of why, it's great to have a book out there when you're a speaker so that people can find you and learn about you.
Right.
But also, I need to be proactive because quite frankly, the competition is fierce, even in speaking. So I have to make those calls and get out there and say, hey, have you ever heard of us? And of course, no one has, right? Because it's just the market is just incredibly crowded. I always think of that as a good thing, though. I don't mind when people haven't. I think, oh, good. This is. I'm glad you haven't heard of me and said, oh yeah, I've known about you for years, and we've just decided never to hire you. It's no, let's go for no, and I get to say, oh, it's this concept about overcoming failure and rejection. Let me send you a copy of our book, and do you hire speakers? I think the mistake most people make, especially marketing that way, is disqualify as quickly as possible. If you're a speaker and you want to market your speaking services, sometimes I think speakers go at it in a roundabout way. They will pick organizations or pick targets, and then they don't ask the really simple, easy questions. Do you hire speakers? Yes or no? If they don't, or if they don't, just don't do that kind of stuff. Right. Walk away. Move on as quickly as possible. And that requires contacting. A lot of times it requires emails and a lot of phone calls and really figuring out who is out there who's hiring the speakers. It is a gold mine once you have a database of people who do. Figuring out who does, that's the hard part.
Right. How do you normally do that? How do you find the right people?
Oh my God. It's literally, I do it a couple ways, actually. It's a ton of research and investigation. So I have kind of figured out who my target audience is, and insurance businesses and anybody with a sales force. Call the company, figure out who's in charge of the sales meetings, get that person on the phone or get their email address and send them an email and just, again, ask the question, right. Do you hire speakers? And kind of from there, you kind of work through the path. But again, it all comes down to having some clarity on who wants my message, who, if they do bring in speakers, would hire me.
Yeah. So when you do find that right person to contact, what sort of information do you offer to send them? You send like a one sheet or something, or? We
actually have a speaking website, which I think for all real speakers who want to be, I guess what I'd call professional speakers, and you can certainly you can have a section or a page on your blog or something like that. But we have a section on our website that has the one sheet, has the video, has all the testimonials, so that when somebody who's in that mode to find a speaker has every piece of information they could possibly need at their fingertips. That's really what you want. So, for someone like you, my advice would be, or for someone who has expertise is, make a tab on your site that says speaking. Here's what I talk about. Come up with some titles of workshops, of sessions that you can do. Mm-hmm. Here's what I talk about. Here's the things I share. Here's what the audience walks away with, so that the person who's thinking of planning a meeting or is planning a meeting has everything they need. They say, wow, this is what I want to give my audience. This person is for me. And then they contact you. So
what's been your success rate with that?
I've been pretty successful, actually. It's really, for me, a lot of it is being patient. Again, this theme comes up time and again. I've got a long list of companies that I want to speak for, and I know that they have meetings. Most of them haven't hired me. So I'm diligently staying in contact, sending things, following up with them, reminding them, and they say, yes, we know you're there.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things. One company that I had been trying to work for a long time brought us in 2014. They had been aware of us, and I had been kind of drip marketing on them for 7 years.
Wow.
Until they finally brought us in. Their sales force had loved our book, and I know they had been purchasing books over the years, and so finally, sometimes it's just a confluence of events. Sometimes it's just people talk about you, or the right person talks about you to an event planner who's looking and says, wow, I need a speaker who can talk on X topic, and someone goes, well, I know this guy, or I know this girl. Those things sometimes happen easily, and then you've got all the stuff that just kind of falls into your lap. Kind of like, it's funny. It's like any kind of marketing, even with book marketing. You do things that take so much time and so much effort, and you see no results, and then you'll have some totally surreptitious thing happen and get a ton of sales for something that you had almost nothing to do with.
Right. Yeah.
And you go, wow, what should I do? The answer is, well, you just have to keep trying a little bit of everything.
Yeah. And a little bit of everything else, and a little bit of everything more.
Yes, exactly.
It seems like I probably spend, most of my time seems to be spent on the marketing, which is both. Sometimes it can be fun, and sometimes it can be kind of a downer. Like, how do you just kind of keep yourself motivated when you're doing this stuff? Because I don't know if you're like me. Maybe you are, but I don't particularly want to spend all my time marketing. I want to spend my time writing more books.
Absolutely. Well, and you see, that is a real challenge, and it is a challenge because it requires a real high level of organization. And I always tell people, just get clarity on what kinds of things that you want to focus on in your marketing.
Right.
I'm kind of lucky, Kevin, in that and a lot of people don't have this, but Richard and I are business partners. Right. So he actually, from just to kind of dovetail into Onyx Web for a second, he's our lead writer.
Okay.
He writes everything. We outline the scenes. I know every scene that we're doing, and fundamentally what happens. Now, exactly how he goes about writing that scene, he will talk me through it usually, but he executes that. He writes that. So he's doing all the writing. Meanwhile, I'm doing all the marketing. Mm-hmm. And so having that second person, but you're right. For someone like yourself, who you're the writer and you're the marketer, and we just had these conversations at the conference that I was at. That is, I think, the biggest issue for a writer. But one of the pieces of advice that we got from a fabulous young woman named Rachel Higginson. I don't know if you know that name. She's kind of a YA writer. She's written, I think, 25 books. She says your best marketing is to write another book.
Right.
So, it's okay. I think, and she was saying, don't go down the social media rabbit hole where you're on Facebook for 7-8 hours a day.
Right.
It's
very easy to do.
Yeah, so it's maintaining that focus and saying, okay, I'm going to do half an hour on Goodreads. I'm going to do half an hour on Facebook, half an hour here, and then the rest of the day I'm writing, because if I can finish this book by December 1st, I've got another book in my pipeline,
right. Yeah, I agree with that advice, and it's tough. And when I talk to people about this business, and I have coaching clients, and I will give them that advice, and you can almost watch the wind just blow right out of their sails, because sometimes just writing that first book is tough enough.
Yeah.
So your Onyx Web series, fictional series, you guys are serializing this, right? Like
we are. Yeah, and the book, actually, we've been kind of plotting and planning this book for a long time, and finally, we originally were going to release it in episodes that we thought was so clever, and we released Onyx Web episode 1 actually over a year ago. October of 2014. And we got great reviews, except the big negative was, and this is Onyx Web episode 1, The Story Begins, but the big negative review was, I don't understand why everything ended with a cliffhanger, nothing was wrapped up, and people were really frustrated, and I felt like writing back on Amazon and saying, that part that says the story begins,
right.
that part, but you can't do that to your readers. No. And I respected their need to vent, but they were really mad about that. So Richard and I said, okay, apparently our cleverness did not work out the way we thought. So we said, all right, let's do it in books. So each book has 3 episodes. And so after reading a book, each episode being around 70 to 80 pages, you walk away with some storylines closed. Yes, there are still cliffhangers because it's a series, but at least you kind of have an idea. And that's where we are now. We actually have book 1, book 2. We just finished, literally book 3 will be coming out in the next couple weeks, and Richard is writing book 4 right now.
And you're doing 10 episodes, or you're doing
10 books.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So that's and how long typically is one of your episodes? Like how many words?
Oh, I'm really bad with word count. I know, we always think, for some reason, we think in pages. The average, let me back it out. The average book is like 50,000 words. So the books are not super long.
Right.
The episodes are not super long, which is why, but when we get done with the series, obviously, it will be a lot of words.
Yeah, a couple 100,000 words,
yes,
right?
Absolutely.
So, wow, 10 books. Okay, I mean that's quite a bit. I mean that's a long serial. So I applaud your energy and enthusiasm on that. I have a couple of serials going, and I don't intend for them to be 10 books long because I just don't think I've got enough story there. But we'll see. The fans may demand it. Who knows? So what is the sort of premise of that fiction?
Well, Kevin, at the beginning, remember I told you Go for No was a really bad title and nobody understood it? Well, right. Rich and I, apparently, we love to do everything the hard way. Okay. So Onyx Web is a multi-genre supernatural soap opera. That's how we're describing it. And when I say multi-genre, the primary genre is paranormal. It's a paranormal suspense. It definitely has some historical in it, and it definitely has a significant dash of horror.
Okay.
So it's multi-genre. I call it a soap opera, and you mentioned having enough story. What we do is we follow 3 different storylines with fundamentally 3 different people. One of those people is Onyx Web herself. Onyx Web is a character. It's also the name of the series. Onyx is kind of the through line. She connects to everyone. And one of the other, we call them tracks. One of the other tracks is a billionaire family, the Mulvaney's. And we have Coda Mulvaney, who we open the story with him at the mansion on Forsyth in Savannah, seeing a girl in a mirror who is, it turns out later, is a ghost, and we have a whole ghostly thing with him. And then the 3rd track is our serial killer.
Okay.
And they all kind of weave together very much like a web. Each episode, you learn more and more about the characters, their story. We have a tremendous amount happen. We start with Onyx when she's in 1904 as a little girl. By the time you get to book 2, she's in her 30s, running around with her crazy alcoholic husband, and Coda is dealing with this girl in the mirror, and our serial killer is killing, and we're kind of flashing back and flashing forward with him. So it's part of our, I guess, the web is very much a web. It is very everything ties together, and it's very well, you get the idea. So here's why I love to make everything so difficult. When we're doing different things, that's okay. What genre is it in? Well, it's all kinds of different genres, and instead of just having a log line like, our book is about a girl who meets a boy and they fall in love, but then they break up, but then they get back together. It's oh my gosh, how do I even explain this series? Which is why we've decided to call it a soap opera, so that people kind of get in shorthand that there's a lot of people, there's a lot of stuff happening.
Right. It sounds like there's a lot of stuff happening. Actually.
Yes.
So, okay, how different is the experience then in writing between the nonfiction and fiction?
Yeah, the writing experience is, well, first of all, because we like to write our business fables, obviously
Yes,
as
yeah.
as fiction, the main difference is obviously needing to get in your content and your lessons and sharing your knowledge, like we did with Go for No. We have our main character go play golf, but then we don't just have him play golf. We have to have him talk about the strategies that we're teaching, and we have to have him talk about the lessons. And so we have a mission there. With writing fiction, which is so much fun, is fundamentally the way we write our story is with a complete series of what we call yes no couplings. And
Yeah.
from the screenwriting world is, something good happens, oh yes, something bad happens. So next chapter, something good happens, yes, oh no, but something bad has happened. And really it's just putting our characters over and over and over in a series of horrible situations, which they manage to somehow, they get out of, and then they're back into some other situation. I find it so much fun to express that creativity and to come up with, we're coming up with twists and stories that we didn't know about when we were first planning the series, which is so much fun as we're going along, and then saying, oh my gosh, what if this person actually isn't real? They're a fictional person, and this and we kind of actually discovered that recently in book 4 with our serial killer, who we had him. We're flashing back to him as a 13-year-old, and he's talking to this girl named Nazila, and we had him have this whole friendship with her, and this is how he survived in the insane asylum that he's stuck in. And then we said, oh my God, what if she's not real? What if she's been in his head the whole time? Well, that's a fun twist that we came up with on the fly.
Right.
And so that's what makes writing fiction so much fun, is you can just, especially when it's paranormal or supernatural, you can just come up with the most off the wall crazy stuff. And as long as your readers bought into your world, it's all good.
Right. Yeah, that's that's the great thing about fiction. You can go in any direction you want, really, especially if you're doing something multi-genre soap opera-y, I think. So how do you map? Did you map out the whole series in advance, or you just doing it book by book, or how you doing that?
We did it kind of. We mapped out the beginning. We were very clear. In fact, we sat down and. This took weeks and weeks and weeks of us sitting down, and what we did was we wrote bullet points for every character for their story for the entire series. It didn't matter if they were a sheriff that was in just a couple episodes. We mapped out his story and what happened to him and where he kind of fit in. We did all of that separately for every single character. Then what we did was we did Post-it notes across the wall, and we looked at all 3 of the tracks and what happened and when it happened. And we were very clear on kind of the first 3 books. And we were very clear kind of with the last book. The middle had nothing, right? The middle is kind of like, okay, we know that we're going to get from point A to point Z, and we know that a lot of stuff's going to happen, and we'll have faith that we'll come up with stuff. Well, that has happened. I mean, in fact, even after we planned, what we realized after writing book 1 was the writing actually takes so much longer to communicate what we would write on a Post-it note.
Right.
Like, oh, this is going to happen. Well, as it turned out, that thing that we said was going to happen took 15 pages.
Right.
Right. In our head, it was like, oh, but that happens.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it takes a lot of time to communicate that. So the interesting thing was that the middle that was so empty kind of got completely filled because everything has taken longer to execute than we thought.
Right.
Which I guess is good news, since we planned this 10-book series. We had a feeling that we would need a lot of space to tell these stories because we knew what happened in the beginning and we knew what was supposed to happen at the end. We knew a lot of stuff was going to go down in the middle.
Yeah.
But I think being organized and plotting and planning out your story I think it's really important. I've been kind of surprised hearing that a lot of writers get themselves in trouble. You know, they kill off their main character and then later realize I shouldn't have done that. You know,
Right.
or you know, different things where they get themselves kind of locked into a particular direction of story. So plotting for us and really knowing where things are ultimately going, but not necessarily how we're going to get there, but knowing this person needs to end up here has been a big help.
So, what do you guys use for your writing? Do you write in like Microsoft Word or Scrivener or something like that?
Sadly, Microsoft Word.
Well, I can't complain too much. I mean, I had a whole career built on Microsoft Word, so I do understand. But that must make it, because I know Word for long format is not an easy tool, so that must make it kind of complicated at times.
It does. That's why the planning and the strategy of our series is so important. But the thing that we know, and we've really kind of broken this down almost scientifically because we've really had to, is now when we have a book, we say, okay, the book, there's 3 episodes. There's 15 scenes per episode. We have 45 scenes to write. Each scene is approximately anywhere from 3 to 7 pages. Here's what happens in each scene. So when we know that, that's almost like a recipe,
Yeah.
right? It's just okay, now we have to execute, we have to write the scene, and then in our book, everything is kind of mixed up. So you jump from one person's point of view, one person's story to the next person, and so it's kind of going back and forth.
Yeah.
Luckily, we've managed to keep it. I mean, I think we've done a good job so far. Our reviews are, it's smooth. These things are not, we're not confusing people with this, and we work very hard to do that. But again, you do have to have the planning because Microsoft Word is, there's nothing to it like Scrivener. And I, you know, there's that moment we had to jump into Scrivener and we were like, okay, next book series.
Yeah. There's courses there's a course I could recommend, but actually, I will say this. Once I started using Scrivener, I never wanted to use Word again. Not for long format writing anyway. So it's been fantastic. So it's got a little learning curve, but once you get in there, it's worth every second of what it takes to learn it. So,
and we will learn it, and we will learn it like we've done everything too late.
Yeah.
But we will learn it.
Here's what's going to be sad. You're going to get in there, you're going to learn how to use it, you're going to learn how to do these sort of, episodic stories in it, and you're going to look back on everything you had to do to write the 4 or 5 books that you've already written, and you're going to realize, man, we could have knocked these out a lot faster.
Oh, I know. I know you're right. It's you're watching me just go off the cliff myself.
Yeah, it's all good. What you'll do is you'll increase your volume after that. All of a sudden, you're writing a 20-book series, and then it'll just go crazy.
Yes.
So, okay, you've got Go for No, you've got your fiction, you've got a couple other books floating around too, right?
We do. We're kind of big on, especially for nonfiction, writing for an industry. So, I mentioned the Unlocking the Secrets of Retail Magic, which was for anyone in the retail industry. We also have a book called $1 Million a Year, which is for people in the direct sales network marketing profession. And I think if I was to give, anybody who writes nonfiction a little piece of advice, just my opinion again, I kind of feel like I see people write these big books that are kind of it's for everyone type of thing. Now, of course, I'm doing that in fiction. Onyx Web's for everyone, I swear, because it's multi-genre. But when it comes to nonfiction, I think you actually have much better chances with reaching a market and penetrating that market and having people love it if you can kind of narrow your focus, right? And you can narrow your focus in one of 2 ways. One is you narrow who the book is for. So it's being really clear, like, this book is for moms who have more than one child. Like, this is for the mom, it's like, that's who this book is for. And you say, oh my gosh, but what about all the moms who just have one kid? Let's not worry about them.
That's another market, and you can write another book.
Yeah, here's for moms with having an only child. How do you deal with your only child?
Yeah.
And all of the special needs for that kid. And then you say, but what are all the women who have no kids? Okay, we're not going there.
Yeah.
It's because what happens is people say, wow, this book is for me. This is written for me. I need this book. This is my situation.
Right.
Same thing if you say, okay, it's not necessarily the market, but I'm writing for a particular industry. I'm writing, and that's why you see my friend Hal Elrod, who wrote The Miracle Morning, which is a fantastic book. I
love that book.
Yeah, he's got The Miracle Morning for salespeople. He's coming out with other versions, I think. And so it's just a way to narrow that down to fit a market. And I think people should be less afraid of that. I think you have a much easier time getting readers when you niche it down.
Yeah, I agree with that. And in fact, I do like that idea of, save all that stuff that would have been this book's for everyone and split it up into multiple products. I mean, that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, and I think, okay, we could have written easily, because Go for No was actually a piece of the sales training program that we had. I mean, we could have easily written a sales book and just said, hey, it's Rich and Andrea's 7 steps to selling.
Yeah.
Here's our take. But we said, all right, no, this is our specialty. This is our niche. This is what people love. This is our unique, our unique selling proposition. And we said, let's narrow down and blow up this little idea, this little topic. But you still see, and I love the people that write these books, but you still see everybody having to come out with their sales book with everything that has to do with sales instead of just saying, okay, I'm just going to write on prospecting, or I'm just going to write on how to get referrals. Bob Burke wrote this book, great book, Endless Referrals.
Right.
So if you want to get, what other book would you go try to find information about referrals from some, kind of sales book that covered everything?
Right.
Not as much as going and finding a book on referrals.
Right.
So,
well, and that's how some people search for books anyway, right?
Exactly.
They're out looking for that specific thing they want to know. They don't want a whole overview of everything. I want to know how to get more referrals. So, okay, we're up against our time here, but this is interesting because what you're doing is a little different than what most authors I talk to are doing. I mean, a lot of authors are doing both fiction and nonfiction. I mean, but you're kind of starting in the middle. So it's interesting to watch it happen because you've been writing nonfiction, but it's got a sort of fiction slant to it. So you've got that advantage. So this is interesting. I'm going to keep watching to see how Onyx Web does. So you'll have to keep me informed.
I will keep you informed. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and you have to, the one thing about writing fiction is you've gotta love it for and be passionate about the writing. I can't imagine going through this process and ultimately not just being okay with your creation. And I hate to say it, and be like one of these people like, I don't care if anyone reads it, I'm writing it for myself, not quite, but we get a tremendous amount of joy every day from the creation and the process, and that's so important.
That's great. Yeah, that is motive enough to keep writing. I think that is exactly right. So, all right. Well, listeners, if you want to check out more of, Go for No or $1 Million Year or any of the other books, check out the Onyx Web series. Of course, you can go. Let's see. I'm going to put a link to your author page actually.
Perfect.
On Amazon, and then you can also go check out goforno.com. And I'll have links to everything in the show notes. So thank you so much for spending the time with me. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to go start reading Onyx Web soon. I'm kind of curious to see what a multi-genre soap opera plays out to.
Well, that's fantastic news that I whetted your appetite, Kevin.
Well, I'm curious. All right, everybody. Stay tuned after the show for our wrap-up, and we will see you all next week. And here we are in said wrap-up. So I hope you enjoyed that interview with Andrea Waltz. I know I did. The thing about I love this podcast. I love being able to sit and talk with individuals who have this wide range of experiences and expertise. I love talking to people and finding out sort of the behind the scenes story of their lives and their careers. We're an unconventional career podcast. That's really kind of how this shapes up. But it's about more than that. And you'll notice if you listen from episode 1 to now, I mean, the concept of the show stays more or less the same. The way I describe it sort of changes, but I always try to come back to the story. That's what's really important to me, and that's where my talents and skills lie. I'm a storyteller by trade, and this is another form of that. I write and I do podcasts. I love the fact that I'm able to talk to these people, but I love even more that I'm able to bring those stories to you, and I'm really hoping you're digging it. So that said, and all that point made, I'm going to go ahead and wrap us up a little quicker than usual, and if you are interested in learning more from our guest, or you want to ask me a question, you got anything at all to say, I hope you'll give me a call. Give me a call at 281-809-WORD. That's 281-809-9673, where you can leave me a voicemail. You can also go on wordslingerpodcast.com, where you can send me an email. You can get on that nifty mailing list and become a slinger. That's something cool. You'll learn all about new releases, blog posts, Wordslinger podcast, creative writing career podcast. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on now. I don't know if you're aware of just how many podcasts that I'm part of now. There's the Wordslinger podcast, which you are listening to at the moment. There is the Self-Publishing Answers podcast, which you have probably you've at least heard me talk about, and I co-host that with Nick Thacker and now Justin Sloan. And then there is the Creative Writing Career podcast, which I co-host with Justin Sloan and Stefan Bugai. And, there's a lot of time and energy that goes into all these, believe me. So, if you are able and if you're willing, and most of these things are tuned towards writers. So if you're a writer, you're especially going to enjoy those other two podcasts. A lot of people consider this one a writing podcast. It's not. I know I talk to a lot of authors, and I know I talk about writing a lot, but it's not specifically a writer's podcast, but it is this writer's podcast. We'll just call it that. So anyway, go check those out. You'll find links to those on my website. If you go to wordslingerpodcast.com, which is also kevintumlinson.com, I won't kid you. You can check out the podcast link that's at the top menu, and you can leave me a voicemail from SpeakPipe there, or you can leave me an email from the contact button there. You can get on the list. 100 different ways to contact me. Pretty easy. So take care of yourselves out there. Have a great week ahead, a great weekend ahead, depending on when you're listening to this. And, come back around next week for another sparkling episode of the Words in Your Podcast. Take care of yourselves.
Wordslinger.